You're watching Access Minnesota. Here's Jim Dubois.
Now, here's more of our conversation about the politics of care in America with U of M professor Joan Tronto. The Affordable Care Act has been highly controversial, both among the public and in Washington and at state capitals.
Yes.
Is this an indication that we are very reticent to embrace any major initiative by, in this case, the federal government to provide care? Or is this an act that perhaps was well intended but just simply did not play out very well due to a variety of logistical issues, not the least of which a dysfunctional website? Where is this resistance coming from?
So the Affordable Care Act is kind of an interesting compromise between care understood so that, on the one hand, someone who's concerned about care like me might say, why don't we have a care system that's a single payer, national health system? It works. Other countries, okay, there are critiques of it there, but it works. Other people will say, no, it's the entrepreneurship of private enterprise, the competition among insurance companies that has produced the best healthcare system in the world that we have in the United States. So those were the battle lines, and in a sense the compromise was to leave people with choice about the health insurance they want to buy, and yet at the same time to spread the cost by insurances spreading risk. Okay, so maybe this wasn't the perfect compromise, and all compromises have the flaws of not meeting either side's perspective of what would be a good system. But the Affordable Care Act is a move, it seems to me, in the right direction. That is, thinking about the ways in which health is a public interest and not just a private interest. Now, if it were up to me, I would take it a couple of steps further and say, well, the truth of the matter is the Affordable Care Act is mostly aiming at health understood medically and understood at the most complex levels of medicine, right? We need protection when we develop cancer. We need protection from a heart attack or when we're in really serious health trouble. We could also spend a lot more money on preventing health problems. We could spend a lot more money on public health, on making sure that people have adequate access to good food, that they eat well, that they aren't in danger. There are other kinds of public health costs that they'd be costs, but they would actually probably improve the quality of people's health as much as all the money that we spend in the United States on medicine, medical advance. It's a trade-off, again, and it's a question of, as a society, where do we think our values lie? Unfortunately, the debate about the Affordable Care Act isn't that debate. The Affordable Care Act debate is the debate about how best to create an insurance system of one kind or another.
How can we make the concept of care and service a greater priority in this country?
I think the first thing to do is just to talk about it. I think we have to start recognizing how much of our lives are actually taken up with care. And more importantly, that if we had our druthers, that's where we'd spend our time. Care actually is really rewarding, even though it's often difficult and burdensome. And if you ask people where they think their lives have value, it's in their relationships with their family, even their coworkers, their neighbors. That's caring work. And if we can recognize the centrality of that, instead of the centrality of having more money or being worried about money, if we could stop worrying about money and start thinking about how to care better, we would have, I think, a richer society.
Joan Tronto is the chair of the Department of Political Science at the University of Minnesota. She is also the author of the book, Caring Democracy, Markets, Equality, and Justice. Professor Tronto, thanks so much for joining us on Access Minnesota.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
That's all for this month's edition of Access Minnesota. We invite you to join in on the conversation. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. We'll see you next month. Thanks for watching.
Access Minnesota. Issues that matter to you. Join us again next week as we bring you the newsmakers and stories that shape our everyday lives. Access Minnesota is produced by the Minnesota Broadcasters Association in cooperation with the University of Minnesota's College of Liberal Arts.